Today, as part of our Business Spotlight program, I'm with Lorraine Corcoran. She's the brand founder and CEO of Naira Beauty, and they're based in Castlebar. So over to you, Lorraine. What is it you do, and how long have you been doing it?
Hi, Kevin. Lovely to meet you and lovely to do this with you. So I suppose my background is I'm professionally trained as a mechanical engineer. So I've been in the engineering sphere since the late 90s. So went through the corporate structure, Hewlett Packard being my first protocol, which was the amazing place to start as a engineer turned entrepreneur. So turned entrepreneur then in 2010. So different businesses leading up to, I suppose, my current Naira Beauty hat. So engineering consultancy for the pharmaceutical world with Team Horizon. That's based here also in Mayo and still on the go. So would have came out of Allergan Pharmaceuticals basically at the time, and we kind of grew and developed that across kind of Europe and stuff and scaled that business quite quick from literally a bootstrapped zero base. So that was kind of where I cut a lot of my first entrepreneurial teeth and understood debit and credit and bringing in ISO 9001 off the bat. And again, coming from the corporate background, it was all big systems and big processes. And then figuring out how to do it as a small business was a whole new learning curve, but still obviously working for the big kind of blue chips, the pharmas and medical device companies. And then as part of that, we got called in because we were doing a lot of engineering projects. We got called into a local manufacturing plant here in Claremorris called Cosmetic Creations. And they needed a bit of help on some regulation kind of requirements on their facility. And again, I suppose project managers, validation, regulatory, all that background, that was kind of what we did. And then I suppose the owner got on really well with my husband. So I've always worked with my husband and had businesses with my husband. So we met in Hewlett Packard. We're both mechanical engineering. So very exciting conversations in this house on a daily basis. But so they got on really well. My husband is actually a Mayo native. I amn't. I'm a blow-in. I'm actually a Longford lady.
Okay.
But I'm in the West over 20 years and got on really well. Wanted that business to keep going from, I suppose, a local person legacy. And we at the time were looking for kind of an outsourced serialization solution. So anybody in the pharmaceutical world would be kind of the track and trace basically of pharma that came in and was a big thing for a long time. So huge capital spend budgets. We're talking in the millions for every single project. And we were trying to figure out an outsourced solution. And also we had got into engineering consultancy because we spent our life in clean rooms and manufacturing and wanted to make products. So cosmetic creations is basically a liquid plant, as I call it. So
Mhm.
anything liquid in the cosmetic sphere, food supplements. So I suppose skincare, self-tanning market, food supplements is what was there in that book at the time. So we acquired that in 2017. And it was about an order book of about 1 million at the time, about 23 staff. And then we kind of went about kind of scaling and growing that business. And then we would have went on and acquired the old Yves Rocher facility down in your neck of the woods, Kevin, in Cork.
Mm.
So we kind of expanded into that. I suppose we knew what we needed to do as a manufacturing organization. We needed to grow the base and the scale and the vessels, all the stuff we needed in the plant, the labs, the technical expertise. So it kind of was a bit of a leap, all right, going from working and being in manufacturing to actually owning two of them with the really long corridor between Mayo and Cork. So it was like our version of the M50 corridor on the west side. And so I got into whole the cosmetic. So I would have worked in GSK and like Leo Pharma on different like serialization projects. So I was kind of well familiar with the medicated side of skincare and then creams and lotions and shampoos.
All right.
So again, into cosmetics then in 20. So simple. So I suppose if you think of creams and lotions are normally, say, emulsions, for examples.
Yeah.
So mayonnaise, biggest condiment in the world is an emulsion. So the same equipment that's used for making mayonnaise is what your creams are made from. So from an engineering perspective, there's a lot of similarities across the different industries. So pharma, med device, cosmetics, even food, like even chocolate and all that. It's the same type of equipment. So from an engineering standpoint, it's just the different regs and the different ingredients you're allowed to use.
Okay.
So we got into the cosmetic sphere. And so we were building that, going really good. Had a really good board of directors, a couple of non-execs again, couple of really experienced people from, I suppose, the FMD, you know what I mean, the fast kind of growing consumer
Hmm.
market, ex-PZ Cousins, again, a similar company that had done a lot of R&D, formulation and manufacturing for big brands and retailers,
Hmm.
like what we were doing. And then also they had their own brand. So I suppose we started looking at the own brand scenario. But then I suppose things were going great. And then all of a sudden, January 2020 happened. COVID was kicking off. Asia obviously hit first. Again, global supply chain, as anybody in manufacturing R&D, we all live in global supply chain land. So the minute anything disrupts your potential ability to produce, so we kind of knew in January things weren't looking good. And then
Hmm.
it started obviously spreading to Italy. So we literally had to make the decision in February. So our order book kind of literally fell off a cliff.
Wow.
Um, so we had to decide from a pivot perspective what we were going to do. Like we were shutting the place down. What were we going to do? Like it was literally. And then I suppose we had a meeting with the HSE, which again wouldn't have been our background working with government departments, to be honest, again, very much, you know what I mean, corporate kind of background and B2B
Yeah.
type is our business experience. So whole new world working with the likes of the HSE. Very awkward meeting and all the rest and not the norm, I suppose, as a business owner and suddenly kind of going, we've a load of staff and two facilities, all the expertise we knew we could turn our hand to doing biocides, which is hand sanitizer. Because
Yeah.
again, it's a liquid, it's a formula. And then we were going to do it in a way that was, scientifically proven and kind to skin and all that good stuff because we had the expertise. So literally less than 3 weeks after that meeting, we started rolling out Air Medica, which was our first actual own brand, but again, kind of
Hmm.
forced to be our first own brand.
Yeah.
Um, and we ended up actually making 9 million units.
Wow.
So two for everyone in the audience, as I say, during during COVID. And again, we scaled. We actually added 50 staff, so we grew to 160 people
Oh.
between the two facilities. We worked obviously, as you remember, borders were closing, all sorts of stuff. So we were obviously getting our alcohol from Irish distillers.
Hmm.
We worked with a plastics company. They're just on the border here with Mayo and Sligo. And I suppose, again, because I had worked a lot in plastics in my pharma background, we designed bottles and we literally were doing a milk run between us. Because, again, we were getting the labels from Dublin. We were trying to get, you know what I mean, everything as local as we could.
Yeah.
Um, because everything, remember, containers started at like the norm container was about 4K. Oh, it grew to 40K. Like the amount of money it was, like our supply chain budget went through the roof.
Yeah.
Um, so I suppose from that, like we went gangbusters, like we were really, really busy. And I suppose myself and my husband even separated. I stayed at home working and brought the kids out of school early. So, and then we got a camper van and he was living inside in the site because again, remember, nobody really knew especially at the very beginning. It was,
Yeah. It was very
it was like
new.
Ebola was talked about and like really not nice
Yeah.
and the way it was spreading, and I suppose the way Italy was hit at the time
Yeah.
very harshly, very quickly.
Yeah.
And again, you were trying to do, well, what do you need to do? And I suppose for us, it was about putting on the green jersey.
Yeah.
And there was no sanitizer coming from Europe. Every border was closed.
Yeah.
So basically, that's why we did it. And I suppose because we had an entire team focused on the one thing. Now we expanded the range a little bit, but I suppose AirMed actually the name comes from an old Irish kind of or if you go back to Dannon and all that type of stuff, it's you know what I mean. She was the wealth and or wellness and all that type and medicine. So that's where AirMed, and then because we'd worked in medical device for so long, you had the ICA. Air Medica. So
Right.
AA. So again, I suppose we were well used to designing and making and developing products for lots of people. So I suppose we just turned on, like, as people ask me, like 3 weeks, that's really, really fast. And I
Mm.
said, yeah, because normally even for cosmetics, from an R&D, you're talking 9 to 10 months. Like we all know pharma, you're talking 10 years. Med
Hmm.
device, number of years, 5 to 6 would be typical. So again, your time to market was phenomenally fast. So I suppose everything was going great, gangbusters. Alcohol was worth more than gold for a while. It was like you'd ambulance people and guards and all sorts trying to get into the site. And it was just a crazy time. No sourdough making for me, though. Unfortunately, I was way too busy. But we did everything online. You know what I mean? You were obviously
Mhm.
people, the production team in bubbles, and we built buildings and all that stuff that every business had to do. So anybody that could work from home, work from home. So
Yeah.
the whole hybrid model really took effect there. And then I suppose I ended up getting long COVID actually the summer of 21 myself. And I suppose we had started because I suppose we had a big team. Their medical was kind of done. So for the labs and the formulation team, they weren't as busy because it was more the production team really once it was up and running. So we were kind of going, well, what? And like, we weren't going to get new customers or people weren't developing products because shops were closed, retailers were closed, stock, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we said, right, this is the perfect time to start building our own brand portfolio. And
Mhm.
that's kind of where Naira really came from. Again, because we the R&D, I suppose we were the ones that came up with a lot of concepts and ideas for customers. And I
Right.
suppose we saw the gap in the market in relation to, I suppose, it started, I suppose, a little bit with the menopause, perimenopause conversations really started then.
Okay.
People also, e-com was really starting to grow in Ireland. I suppose Ireland has always been kind of the leading front from a European perspective on e-com. And
Yeah.
I suppose we had all the Mintel reports and all that good stuff because I had a full operational R&D team. So we were kind of going, well, what can we do different? And I suppose I was in my 40s going through, I suppose, sickness with the long COVID, kind of going, look, my skincare needs aren't being met. I know I'm getting hyperpigmentation, bit of rosacea, more sensitive in my skin. I've always had good skin, like genetics is huge in skincare, but also you also want to nourish and help your skin as you know what I mean as your journey goes on from a hormonal perspective. So I
Okay.
suppose we were really tapping into that hormonal thing, not really seeing a lot out there
Hmm.
in the marketplace. So that's, and I suppose serum technology, plant-based actives, really kind of efficient, green processed kind of ingredients. Again, ingredients is what I love talking about.
Hmm.
And then I suppose with cosmetics, you've way more choice. I suppose when you're in the pharma world, it's quite limited from a raw material or ingredient perspective versus in cosmetics, you get that lovely blend of that engineering science, but also that I suppose a little bit of magic or alchemy, as we say. It's you know what I mean. It's a bit more like the chefing world,
Right.
um, whereas a Michelin star chef can do amazing things with base ingredient. Like that's the idea. You know what I mean? That's the
Okay.
idea.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be Gordon Ramsay or Nigella Lawson here, but my microwave, as Nigella would say, but that was kind of the idea of Naira. And then unfortunately, we thought the hand sanitizer thing would be great for a while. Like we grew that business, we were over 16 and nearly 17 million at one stage as the business. And all of a sudden, COVID was over and the plug was unplugged again and the whole thing fell flat. So off the cliff again. But unfortunately, again, because of the way the retailers were our customers, there was a few other things, regulatory changes in the South Tanning market
Hmm.
had changed from a European perspective. So there
Okay.
was the main active in that is called DHA. There's a big longer chemical name, but DHA everybody knows it as.
Hmm.
And what you call it, the that regulatory change had come, and 70% of our order book was associated with all those products. So we basically had to change all of that. So you're dealing with a lot of customers, a lot of products, a lot of SKUs. So that was a big delay then from a production perspective. And then there's a few other things that you might remember, the Suez Canal delay. And so, like there was literally a litany of stuff that kind of turned into a big tornado.
Yeah.
Sorry. Um, but apologies now on that, Kevin.
No worries.
We can cut that. But
Yeah.
so that, yeah, so basically there was a load of different reasons. So suddenly we were kind of in trouble as a business, December 22, yeah, 21, yeah, 21, sorry, 21. And then so January 22, we had to start looking at cuts and figuring out, you know what I mean, from a cost saving perspective. And we had to look at kind of staff because we had hired so many people. So
Mm.
when everybody else was laying off, so we had a bit of that to do. But then I suppose we knew there was a lot of other things going on, and we knew we had to kind of save the business. We knew there was a really good business there,
Yeah.
and we wanted to kind of make sure that was the case. So we entered into the examinership process.
Hmm.
So that was 6 months of my life that I never want to relive. So anybody that's been in an examinership or understands it, it's a tough, tough place to be as a business owner. And I suppose it's only really now, how many years, a couple of years later, nearly 3 years later, I'm able to talk about it a lot easier. It's a
Hmm.
very complicated process. It keeps changing. The rules keep changing. Um, so we went through 6 months of that because I suppose we knew the business was really good, but we wanted to make sure it had the longevity and it could stay going. So that business is still going,
Right.
Cosmetic Creations here in Clamars. Um, but I suppose
And
after all that,
you came out of examinership then, did you, at some stage?
yeah, successfully came out of examinership.
Yeah.
So yes, so the business is still thriving and running. And I suppose at the time then, we kind of, because you kind of you're the steward through it, but as the owner, your kind of status changed the minute examinership comes in. The
Yeah.
examiner takes over, so it was Mazars in our case. Um, like again, everybody did their best, but like it is a tough, tough time. Like we didn't sleep for 6 months. It was, you know what I mean? It was a really, really tough place to be as a business owner, and you know, to feeling responsible both for your employees, for your customers, for
Mhm.
what you were trying to do, what you're trying to build.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, now I would just have to cut this. Dad, my father is here, so
All right.
Dad, can you please get out? I'm on a call. Sorry now, Kevin.
No worries.
Um,
They'll edit that. They'll edit that. Don't worry.
yeah, sorry now. But I was just letting the dog out as what was going on. But whatchamacallit,
So you came out of it. It was tough time, but and
sorry.
if so, you came out of it in a 6 month period, is it? You have
Yeah,
six.
so we did, yeah, 6 months. So there's very tight timelines with
Mhm.
examinership and what you're meant to do and how you're meant to know. I know the rules have changed a bit since we did it also,
Yeah.
but there is very tight timelines and you have to hit certain things at certain times and high court and all that good stuff. And I suppose you don't get to get up and say anything as the business owner. It is very much a legal based process,
Okay.
and has to fulfill certain things. So you're kind of driving. It's not driving an automatic, but it's like like an automatic car nearly, where you're in the driving seat but you've no control. Like
So
that's the only way I can nearly explain it.
yeah.
And
Well,
that's been nice about it, to be honest. And like you're doing it
well,
in a
it's
roller coaster fashion.
it's interesting that, but you came out of that successfully, and the business now is trading profitably at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose we decided that was our time to exit. Original investor kind of took over, and we said, look, this is time for us to get maybe out of the B2B market. We took a bit of time off that summer,
Hmm.
went in a camper van round Europe with our kids. So we kind of said, look, family is where it matters the most. And I suppose we had spent 7 years up and down to Cork, Dublin. Like we had put a phenomenal amount of time and energy into business life,
Hmm.
as both of us involved, I suppose, as a married couple. So I suppose we said we wanted to give a bit of time back to the kids and
Right.
spend time with them, and I suppose kind of reground ourselves. And I suppose as part of that, I suppose sellout, we did. Naira came with us, so we had the formulations, a bit of work done. There was a very small soft launch, but again, COVID kind of really messed it up. We actually did a little pop-up shop in Cork. But if you
Okay.
can remember, even that Christmas, that second, sure, nobody was out and about. It was like the worst time ever to launch launch a brand and a product, and you know what I mean. So you're very unknown, and I suppose people were still very concerned, COVID-y stuff. So it wasn't, you know what I mean, the best time. So we kind of did pause, and then I suppose we had never been on the digital marketing side. So we literally had to do digital marketing courses. My husband did graphic design and photography. I did like a 1 week full on course on, and understood suddenly what SEO meant because I didn't know what that was beforehand, and
Okay.
Shopify and like social media, how to turn on. Because I suppose we had a marketing team. We had hired up and scaled the last business to have all these functions. So we were involved in things, but you didn't physically have to do everything. As you know, you grow a business, and
Ah, sure. Yeah. No.
you know what I mean. So you're trying.
You
So
delegate all that. Yeah.
yes, we're back to a two person team,
Okay. Okay.
basically. And I suppose we wanted to prove it and see could we do it. We knew the formulations, obviously, like we were really strong on that side, but I suppose we had to jump the fence really, and suddenly now being our customers, all our customers had been doing, and we finally understood what they were at for the last
Okay.
number of
Good.
years.
Good. Good.
So it was quite a different, you know what I mean? You've completely, and I suppose as a background in engineering and R&D and engineering, it's like being in front of cameras and videos and being the voice of a brand. And it's a very unusual place I find myself in, and not one I suppose I necessarily have the training for.
Mhm.
Um, but I suppose I kind of really want, because I've been involved in so many products, and I really, you know what I mean, really respect the back end, and really want people to understand the amount of work and effort and expertise
Mhm.
it takes to get products on shelves that I
Yeah.
don't think normal people who don't come from my background understand. And I suppose, and also I suppose I am a woman, and you know what I mean, hormonal and all the rest. And you kind of want to go, well, I want to add to other people's lives, and I have
Okay.
so much knowledge and expertise, and how do I transfer that? You know what I mean? Not just be stuck, and I suppose in a clean room for the rest of my life.
Right.
Lovely place to be and all the rest, but again, it's that interaction with people and helping people on their journey.
Mhm.
And I suppose I just love meeting people anyway, having conversations and having the chats, and it's just grown so well. And ecom has, we've really focused. So again, we did our normal, focused really hard on doing it, and do it really well. So keep the main thing,
Yeah.
as much as possible, and using all our knowledge and expertise from both engineering, entrepreneurship, problem solving, having to pivot. I suppose being back in the, I suppose the startup bootstrapping scenario I am at the moment, to be able to rebuild again. And I suppose even maybe like we only literally, the last 18 months has really been when we started hitting them. Like the first 6 months we were trying to find our feet and
Yeah.
understand what we were going to do and how digital marketing works and get the right people on board. And it's only really in the last, really September, October, we started properly building the team. So we
Right.
have a team of 6 here full time in Mayo, with a few obviously part timers helping on the fill in side and, you know, the
Yeah.
back end kind of end of the business. But on the front end digital marketing side, we've
Mhm.
kind of added to the team because we would have, again, using freelancers, and some people work out, some people don't. Like we've all had their stories about employees that work well and don't, you know what I mean? You're trying to build the right team for
Yeah.
what you're doing. And we're very much in the scale up, very dynamic. You could be doing anything from one day to the next. You do try to plan.
Yeah.
I suppose you have the big vision and you know where you're going.
Yeah.
But I suppose we've scaled this from literally a standing start to over 40,000 customers. We've a 4.9 rating on Trustpilot, which, you know what I mean, is one of the highest, especially as a new brand.
Wow. Yeah.
We're only e-com. I suppose our revenues last year we hit 1.6. So again, year two of real trading.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, I won't go through the whole accountancy stuff, especially with you, Kevin. But I suppose that's your top level number. Obviously, we all know costs and all the rest that go underneath it. But I suppose we were in the black, as I say, as opposed to in the red, leading. But again, I suppose this is all self-financed at the moment, and you
Okay.
can only go as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And I suppose we don't have the assets like we would have had against in the last business with the manufacturing facilities as
Mhm.
your back end. And even in our previous business before that, invoice discounting was quite new back in Team Horizon days. So again, you had a blue chip book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So again, you're trying to use a finance model that suits your
Mhm.
business. And we've had a little bit of ecom kind of support.
Mhm.
But again, anybody that runs an ecom business knows there's a lot of apps, there's a lot of things to pay. They're all subscription-based models, pretty much.
Yeah.
So there's money going out. Meta costs quite a lot from an advertising perspective. And then I suppose we're trying now to look at different, that whole omni-channel effect.
Mhm.
So talking to distributors, potential retail partners, both from a trade kind of, maybe even a couple of spas. I'm talking to a spa actually down in West Cork at the moment.
Good.
Um, so again, trying to touch different things. We're in the UK since last summer. Again, the whole postal thing and getting that right with Royal Mail took a bit of work. So we're working with a 3PL up in Strabane. So we're kind of covering our Royal Mail that way because again, it's not, we kind of cover most of Ireland ourselves, so the fulfillment and stuff. Um, but again, we've like shipped our first order to Hungary last week, which was the
Mhm.
first out of
Great.
nowhere. We've done Sweden, we've done Spain, we've done Canada, a few bits in America. So again, I suppose because I suppose our background is so global and working globally, I suppose getting back to the likes of North America and stuff. So I suppose Canada would probably be, so we're in conversations with a few, but again, you know as well as I do, Kevin, these things take a bit of time. So you start
Absolutely.
the conversations now. But again, I suppose for us, for me, this is the start of year three for Naira, and that stability and growing that base, because I said we've proven our customers really love the products. They're actually doing what they're say on the tin.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes them unique sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, and I suppose it is that effectiveness, and I suppose it's, and again, that knowledge sharing. So every pack. So say this is an example of our trial pack that we
Okay.
send out. So we do this whole kind of try small sizes, because the thing with the skincare market is you normally have to buy big products,
Hmm.
and it may not suit your skin, or you don't have a full routine of how to do it. So in that pack, so again, we have like an AM PM card, upside down, sorry, AM PM card.
Hmm.
So again, taking on the med device pharma industry with the IFUs, instructions for use documents, and then you're doing color coding, so you're using your engineering. So you know what I mean, the white bottle is a drenched serum, it's a triple. So people can, and you put all your images. So you're trying to use your engineering, supply chain, manufacturing background to make life simple and easier for like normal people. So for people who just want to know, I want my skin to look better, or like I
Yeah.
have customers from the ages of start of puberty to 90s. And I suppose for us, customers are first, we're very customer centric. We're really kind of trying to build that knowledge out, help them out. I get phone calls, emails daily on, queries. I have, you know what I mean? I'm suffering from rosacea, dry skin, sensitivity.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I've never had good skin. I like literally I had a 27-year-old last week I talked to, and she was showing me images, and like it's a journey that people have to go on. And I suppose especially as women, it is our face out to the world. So I
Yep.
suppose hair, makeup, skin is and what we wear is kind of the way we represent ourselves to the world. So it's all about that confidence and building that inner confidence. And I
Mhm.
suppose that's kind of where the word Naira comes from as well. It's linked to people always ask me, where'd you get Naira? And I suppose I wanted a name that could be a female name. So you're like a friend called Naira. But it's also the goddess Saraswati, which is wisdom and beauty in Indian culture.
All right.
And
Okay.
we actually use the peacock
All
as our,
right.
so again, we use the peacock feather a lot. I suppose I was always interested in the likes of JP Rigney there in gunpowder, and his use of animals in. So again, if people can't remember Naira how to spell it, it's the one with the peacock. It's the color, you know what I mean. So it's
Yeah.
brand recognition. It's easy for people to remember, and plus, it just, I love the peacock anyway. It allows colors from a Pantone perspective.
Yeah.
So again, the color, you know what I mean? It allowed, because I've worked on so many other brands, and you're stuck maybe with black and white. It's
Hmm.
very limiting.
Yeah.
And I suppose, look, life's colourful. You want to add that bit of glam, bit of luxury as well. So the peacock, I suppose, always, even though it is a male bird, the colourful one, not the actual female one,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
anybody that might point that out. But again, you have to go with the beauty and the look. So again, you're weaving the story and the brand story and the tone and the voice and who you're trying to reach out to. And I suppose on this journey, that's what I suppose, because my B2B and professional background, I'm more used to having those type of conversations. So it's been a whole new world,
Wow.
direct to consumer.
Yeah.
That, to be honest, it's great because you never know who's going to ring you tomorrow morning. So
Well, I tell you what, you've probably answered all the rest of my questions. Yeah, no. Like one of the next question I was going to ask you, what do you attribute your growth to? But you've gone through the whole lot of that, and it seems to be like absolutely hard work and pivoting and learning and adjusting to the market, finding out what your customers are all about. Now the other one I'd be afraid to ask you is, if you had to start from square one in business, what would you do differently? So I mean, you've been doing everything differently, I think, yeah.
yeah, and it is, but it is that learning. I suppose for me, it is, I suppose, always staying curious. Again, engineering mindset, curiosity is kind of what always drives you, because you want to solve problems and make things better for people. That's, I
Okay.
suppose, the engineering mindset is making the world a nicer, better place for people as best we can. That's kind of what a lot of engineers do it. And I suppose the bit of maybe staying ignorant, and I say that in a way that you're not looking over your shoulder, and you're not, and that's hard. That takes time and effort and confidence and maturity, that, you know what I mean, you don't feel in comparison to other people, or that what you're doing is the right thing, but it doesn't trip you up. And I suppose going forward, always that resilience to be able to, and I can tell you it's not always easy. And anybody in business knows this. There's a lot of unglamorous side of business that people don't talk about. And I suppose for me, I suppose I've always been very direct, very real. I am from the Midlands, so I suppose that may be the way we are built. But I suppose, and you add the engineer and logical mindset. But again, we are psychological, emotional beings.
Yeah.
And I suppose we all know people buy off people. And then you'll have I was actually talking to a lady from Cork last week on the phone, and she was loving the like, I'm not real Irish. Like, we are not used to compliments. And you know what I mean? It's like anybody asks you where you got something, well, especially if you're a woman, you usually say pennies,
Yeah.
even though it probably isn't, or duns or whatever, even though there's nothing wrong with either of them, especially
Yeah.
duns these days.
Mm.
But you know what I mean? It's that embracing that compliment, and like, and that's why we have 5-star reviews coming out the yin yang on Trustpilot, which, you know what I mean, is amazing when you read them, and the way you affect everyone's like I've cancer-based treatment patients that, you know,
Oh,
your skin goes into free fall when you're going through cancer,
ouch.
or post-pregnancy, you know, or you're a bright bee and you want your skin to look the best it's ever looked, and you
Hmm.
could be any age, or getting married.
Hmm.
And it's that suddenly it's certain, like that responsibility of making people's everyday lives a bit better is kind of, I've kind of grown into that purpose.
Fantastic. So
If
that's
you
a,
asked me years ago, would I ever be the owner and front person for a skincare brand, like there was no way I would have
no,
said that was in my future. I suppose engineering and, you know, all that type of stuff, yeah, no bother. But
it,
it's funny how the world evolves to be your true calling. If you allow it, I suppose you have to lean into it and be willing to face the consequences and the, I suppose, the uncomfortableness of, I suppose, being back, I suppose, in my 40s. I have 3 teenage kids, and I suppose anybody with kids knows they're not cheap to rear. And like, I suppose at the end of the day, you just want them to have a good life and the experience that they want. So you have to make sacrifices as a parent, as you do as a business owner. And I suppose, you know, what I mean, I've blood, sweat, and tears. As much as I said Air was hard going in COVID times, Naira has, you know what I mean, really much been like the what I do all day, every day. And it's, I've never worked so much on a project. And
wow.
I work a lot. I've always worked a lot on projects. So whether I'm a contract engineer in a place or a full-time employee back in the day in corporate, like I could
Mhm.
very easily be in a clean room at 11 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? You do what you need to do to get the project across the line.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering, is this next question relevant then for you? How, how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
But yeah, that has always been a real, and I suppose I've had to lean, and I suppose that's why we took the time out
Yes,
after the
you took
selling,
work with the kids. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and like did the camper van thing, and you know what I mean, really enjoyed the moment. I suppose I'm a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization as well, which is a global peer-to-peer network since
Mm.
2016. I'm involved in a few other like Network Ireland and stuff as well. Um, so you're kind of using your, trying to spend as much time with people you really like, similar mindset. So it
Great.
is an enjoyable, no matter what you're doing. So I used to think, you know, going up and down to Dublin a lot, because in the west of Ireland, look, you have to travel. That's just the way of life when you're running business. It's all centred Dublin. You know what I mean? You have to get out.
Yeah.
Hit Dublin Airport, you have to go to, mostly. So you're kind of, it's again the mindset thing where it's thinking about the opportunity. So instead of going, oh my God, I have to go all the way up, half 5 train, land in Euston, 8:30, get to Dublin city centre, all that good stuff. And you kind of think about the people you're going to spend the time with. And it's like going to the gym. You know that by going to the gym, as much as you might go, oh, try and put it off, you're going to feel so much better after doing it.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's, and I suppose, yeah, doing sauna, cold dips. So I try and get in the sea. I'm not far. I used to live in Westport for 10 years. So I
Mm.
love being close to the ocean,
Yeah. Yeah.
and getting that kind of, just even, I call them dips. You're not really swimming, you're just dipping. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's yoga and bit of breathing. You know what I mean? It's all those little things. And I've had to kind of, I'm a bit of an OCD and trying to do as much as possible. And I've always been very busy, busy. And you're trying to be a bit kinder to yourself and take a little bit more time and kind of go, look, it's okay, it's fine. But look, if you have to work late, I know an awful lot of people in business, and they are they all are grinding. They're working really, really hard.
Mhm.
And anybody that had success knows that it isn't overnight. It's the 15, 20 years leading up to
Yeah.
that. And then all of a sudden they're everywhere and everybody's talking to them and they're on every podcast and they're on YouTube, you know what I mean? And they're everywhere. But that's because you have, all those stepping
Put in the
stones.
grind, but leading up to that, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you about your employees as well, really.
Mm.
What are your learnings as an employer, and what do you do to foster a positive and productive work environment?
So I suppose, yeah, because we've kind of built and grew a few businesses and hired a lot of people, and there is quite a mix. So I suppose you learn, I suppose for me, it's mindset.
Hmm.
Um, More so it's not necessarily matching the skills of the job, but it's the person. So we've had great success with people come from the service industry, so worked in bars, hotels, so customer direct interaction, so the communicators. So if
Right.
people are able to do that, that really makes so you can kind of make them do anything. We would have done a lot of engineering mentorships, so kind of training, and then I would have been the engineering mentor, and then brought engineers up through the ranks,
Yeah.
and college education and stuff. So apprenticeships
Mhm.
basically.
Right.
And they're some of the best engineers I've ever worked with because they were years working in a bar, but they really had made their decision in late 20s. I even had one, he was well in there. I think he was in, was he 50s at once? Yeah, 50s. But he always wanted to be an engineer. He is today.
And
You know what I mean? So
so,
it's I
so
suppose
for you,
those type of people.
yeah, so for you, the mindset, the attitude, the approach is the big thing, and then we can train them for skills. So, I mean, I think the old saying is hire for attitude, train for skills. Yeah.
Exactly. And look, as the SMEs, we don't, you know what I mean? You can't compete against the big corporates and the big salaries. And it's that people who want to, I suppose, believe in the vision and the purpose of what you're doing as a business, and you're, I suppose, doing that every day. So I suppose it's empowerment over micromanagement. I'm not a micromanager, never have been. Again, the Hewlett Packard HP way, the way Hewlett Packard was built was based on trust of the employees and flat structure. And you know what I mean? Everybody involved and asking questions. There's no stupid question. Like I ask loads of questions all the time,
Hmm.
because it's the way you learn. And I suppose there's no judgment. Um, Take the rough with the smooth. It just takes, like, again, it depends on what you're building, where you are as a business as well, because I suppose I'm in the very dynamic unstable situation at the moment, so it takes a certain, again, I've 20-year-olds now, in the team. So again, I suppose myself and my husband are normally seen as the mom and pop of the organization a little bit, and I was like, hold on here a second, I'm only in my 40s. But you know what I mean? You do, I suppose it's, but again, I remember when I was traveling around the world in Hewlett Packard, and I worked in medical device and schizophrenia research in New York. And sure, you thought the world was your oyster, 23, 24. Yeah, you could do anything. You were bulletproof. And you know what I mean? You're completely different, but like you're, again, for us, and I've had loads of people have gone through a great journey with us, and then a different opportunity comes in, and you're like, going, let them go. You know what I mean? It's no point holding people. If they're going, they're going. And
Yeah.
it's not all about you either.
Yeah.
And if you can bring a person on a journey and they really enjoy it well, and you all work together really well, and you know what I mean, working with people you really
Yeah.
like to spend time with. And if you have to come into work and you've hired people that you're like, I'm never going to get on, but again, also people you don't necessarily have the same thought process, great things can come out of that as well, because it's two different perspectives. And you know what I mean, there might be a bit of clashing and all that, and you figure out that culture. But
Mm.
yeah, we would spend an awful lot of time in, especially in the cosmetic creations, because we had the Mayo team and the Cork team, and anybody that know, like, you've worked in multinationals around the world, and like there's a different mindset from Mayo to Cork, even never mind Ireland to Singapore, or you know what I mean.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
I was aware of it certainly where I worked in Riyadh. The city had 160 nationalities, so
mm.
of a city of 2 million at the time. I'm sure it's doubled since, but
And like we would have had Venezuelans and Italians and like all sorts, and it's great because you have such a mix. And then, but again, there is a mindset, and it is, you kind of have to seed it though, and that's why we had to spend a lot of time in Cork, because we kind of had the Mayo facility first, and there was a completely different background to where those people had come from, and knowledge and expertise. And again, if you take somebody from a corporate structure, And you know what I mean? It's completely, if you drop them into an SME, a completely different mindset. So you're trying to amalgamate the culture and you bring people on a journey. And
Mm.
it's again though, it's the time and effort, and it's again, look, there's certain people I would hire again in a heartbeat, other people I wouldn't. And look, that's life, isn't it? That's
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, you again, this is where the culture is so important. You know,
mhm,
once you know what your culture is, and it's about getting a fit. Do people
mhm.
fit in? They may have different points of view, etc., which is great, as you say. Uh, but it's that overall culture. I think one business owner said to me, it's kind of like the glue that keeps the whole thing together and in a
It's like
direction. You know.
maybe a culture eats strategy for breakfast, as
There
they
you
say
go.
in all the good books.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's
the one I attributed to is Peter Drucker back in the 60s, but you know
that's right.
that's the one that sticks in my mind. But yeah, absolutely, it's the one I use all the time. In fact, I get a bit of ribbing about it from time to time, you know. But I suppose just to round off, then, Lorraine, I mean that's been a very comprehensive description of the journey, and there's a lot of stuff in there that our
Mm.
viewers can take from that. Um, Maybe just to finish up, I think you've covered it a bit, but what are some common misconceptions about running a business and how do you address them?
I suppose the whole I suppose that everything is, you know what I mean, straightforward, linear, that you just kind of, it's not, it's that roller coaster we were talking about. I was even a few months ago, I was trying to explain to somebody what my brain felt like. I felt, you know, that you feel like you're that swan gliding across the water. But
Mm.
literally, I think my swan was upside down and the legs are flapping in my brain. And that was the image I was like, or the like idea I was trying to portray. So,
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? You're always trying to be calm and confident. You know, it's, you know, the whole fake it till you make it type idea, the real American kind of ideas. But
Mm,
again, it's and I suppose it's that understanding of vulnerability. And again, it's resilience is huge, but also being vulnerable and being able to say, hey, this, I don't know anything about this. My area of expertise is not like transferring it. I know how to supply retailers, but not as the brand owners. It's a whole new journey I'm going on. And it's like the whole sustainability conversation a lot of people are having.
mm,
We're all trying to do our best. We've started, long way to go, but we're not trying to claim we're the best. And you know what I mean? That you're very honest about where you are on the journey. And I suppose if you ask people, I suppose going, look, this is where I am. Do you know anything about it? And that's sharing, again, sharing of knowledge and helping each other out. And I suppose the whole scaling is scale fast as you can. But
mm,
again, it's scaling to suit your lifestyle and what you actually want. And I suppose that's, you know what I mean? I would have scaled two previous businesses quite fast, quite well.
mhm,
Different things happened. You know, timing isn't, you know, timing has to be perfect as well. Opportunity and timing and luck is a big thing. And it's, but for now, for me, for Naira, it is scaling the business to a way that I can come from a place of abundance to be able to do what I need to do.
yeah,
And I suppose for me, that is, I suppose, taking pleasure and being, I said it at the beginning of the year, my mantra is about being the kind. And I suppose it's like, you know, the oxygen mask in an airplane, you have to put it on first for you to help other people and for
mhm,
me to help and support other business people. So I do as much as I can with, I suppose, more startups and women in tech and STEM and all that type of stuff, because I suppose there's very few women in my from my background being vocal about stuff. And I suppose a little bit not afraid to say stuff that other people might be. Um, because you know what I mean, if you don't say, be honest and real about where you are, how, you know what I mean, it's
mhm.
for me that, and I think the world has become more like that and you're getting more recognized
Good.
for being that. And like it takes, like, for even for me to do this call with you, this isn't my first time doing this type of thing. So it's, I've done like literally two podcasts in the last 2 weeks. This is my third,
That's
and it is a whole new world for me. Um, and
yeah,
being able to concisely say, look, I'll get more eloquent, better at my saying my story. And again, it's practice and doing things over and over. Like it's like that, you know what I mean? It takes the 100 hours thing or the 1,000 hours in the outlier book.
yeah, yeah,
um, it's
yeah.
practice and doing things, and the more you do it, and look, you're never going to be, you know, yourself. You're on episode number what at this stage, and sure, this episode versus your first few, I'm sure, completely different. You know what I
Well,
mean? So it's that learning journey.
yeah, night and day. Absolutely. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Lorraine. There's a huge amount of stuff in there. our viewers. And I think just the whole journey and what you've done, I mean, I think people will find it inspiring because no matter what you came up against, you worked your way around it and found a way through. And I mean,
That good old stubbornness really helps sometimes.
yeah. Yeah. Listen, Lorraine, it's great been talking to you. And thanks again for taking the time and being available for our viewers. Thanks again.
Kevin, thank you so much.